Welcome to San Joaquin College of Law Today, a show dedicated to issues and events within the law school, which are of general interest as well. SJCL Today is produced by San Joaquin College of Law, a nonprofit law school in Clovis, founded in 1969 to provide quality legal education. Over 88% of its graduates have passed the California bar examination. More than a quarter of the practicing lawyers in the Fresno area are San Joaquin College of Law graduates. We begin our program by interviewing two of the founders of the law school. Oliver Wanger was a young attorney back in 1969 when he was approached to help in the formation of San Joaquin College of Law. He later served as a federal judge for 20 years before returning to private practice with the firm of Wanger, Jones, and Helsley, and also making a return to teaching at SJCL. Founder John Loomis has retired from the practice of law, but has continued to serve on the SJCL Board of Trustees since 1969. 3 years ago, the president of France named him a Chevalier in honor of his World War II military service.
I'm Jan Pearson. I'm the dean at San Joaquin College of Law, and I'm here today with one of our esteemed founders, Mr. John Loomis. How are you?
I'm just fine, Jan.
Well, we want to talk a little bit about how the law school happened to get started. I know there's quite a story to that. Can you remind me of that?
Of course. The first I heard about it was when I had a telephone call from Judge Dan Iman, and he said, I am thinking about forming a law school in Fresno because there is no opportunity for anyone to get a legal education without going completely out of the community. And we should have one here that is a good school that has the ability to give a good education.
The effort was an unintended combination and a convergence of ideas. I started practicing law in Fresno in 1967 in the district attorney's office, and my first teaching was at Humphreys College of Law, which was a Stockton-based school. It was state accredited. I was teaching class in a ballroom at the California Hotel, which was still a hotel, and competed with a dance band each night of class for the students' attention. And in the time that I taught there, nobody ever came to see whether I was teaching. Nobody reviewed my exams or vetted the exam before I gave it. And there was essentially no contact from the time that I started the semester until the final grades were turned in. And so recognizing that there was no law school from Los Angeles to Sacramento, it was an idea at that time that why not a law school in Fresno? There's a population that's growing. There are not many professional schools, at least at the PhD or the graduate level, beyond masters in any of the local colleges. And so I talked to then, he became a judge, John Gallagher Jr., known as Nip Gallagher, about the idea that we would start a school. At the same time, and unknown to me, then Municipal Court Judge Dan Iman had the same idea. And he had a longtime friend, John Loomis, who essentially was contacted by Dan. Dan then convened a meeting at his residence in the Tower District on Home Avenue. And the initial meeting included Nip, John Loomis, Judge Hyman, and me, and the question was whether to expand beyond that. And we decided that we would go forward. Nip was busy with other things at the time, and so he didn't continue. And the initial allocation of responsibilities was that Judge Hyman was going to be the first president of the school, and he would essentially be responsible for finding us a home, if you will, where the classes could be conducted. He would provide assets, if there had to be assets in the early stages, and would use his experience and influence to help in the formation of the school. John Loomis became the vice president of the school.
I took the academic side. Ali took the legal side, and Dan took, let's call it the public side. We had to find a place to hold our classes. We had to set up an arrangement for getting out applications. We had to have we decided a nonprofit corporation to be the basis for the school.
And I, being the youngest at that time, this was in 1969, I was 28 years old, and so I was the corporate secretary treasurer and was charged with the responsibility to form a nonprofit corporation, to get 501c3 tax exempt status, to do the education department qualification, to contact the state bar, the educational consultant, and to basically do all the legal work that attended setting up the school. And we, of course, had no compensation for doing that. Dan fronted the initial expenses, and that was the premise that the school was founded on. We had the following concepts and precepts in organizational thinking.
And so the three of us were the incorporators of San Joaquin College of Law. That was another thing we had to do. We had to choose the name.
Was there a debate?
Not very much. I had remembered that in talking to Judge Gilbert Jerkberg a number of years before, that he had told me that he had formed a law school in Fresno, and that it was named the San Joaquin College of Law. Gilbert was a neighbor and good friend of mine, and I felt that would be a nice thing, sort of honoring his efforts of some 20 or 30 years previously.
Now that's a story I've never heard before. How did you end up at Fresno Pacific as the place the school started?
Well, that is interesting, perhaps in that, of course, we needed a place. And I said, we should try to get on a college campus somewhere.
Judge Hyman went to Pacific College. He knew Art Wiebe, the president, a very forward-looking, he's a mathematician, a great scholar, and he's still out there, quite frankly. I saw him, I gave an address at their senior group a few months ago, and President Wiebe was there, which was great. But the original formation included a lease of 3 classrooms in their, they have a building, it's a round building that has classrooms, almost an amphitheater style with rows of seats that are elevated. In other words, it steps up. Each row of seats is a higher elevation. And so they were good premises. We started there. Adina Schmidt, who was a registrar at Pacific College, became our registrar. And so that was the structure. The 3 of us as the officers, Adina Schmidt as our registrar, President Wiebe as our, if you will, one of our great supporters. And within a couple of years, we formulated a joint degree program with Pacific. But Someone who you've undoubtedly heard about, who was a great assistance to the school, was John Gorfinkel, who was the State Bar Educational Consultant. He had founded the Golden Gate School of Law in San Francisco and was a very well educated and very knowledgeable and beneficent individual who just gave us a tremendous amount of assistance and wonderful guidance. In fact, we were able, with a 100% bar pass rate, we had to take the baby bar in our first year. By second year, we got provisional accreditation from the state bar, and then we're fully accredited by our fourth year.
What do you think were some of the biggest challenges you faced in not just getting that off the ground, but moving it forward?
One was that there was a lot of skepticism in the community, in the law community. No one seemed to think that this would work. It would be just like other law schools that had been formed in the past, which ran for a little bit. Nobody or very few ever passed the bar, and most of them folded up after a few years of operation.
So we started with the first classes, and I look around at judges, at county court clerks, and other achievers who were in those first classes, district attorneys, public defenders, you name it.
That first class was amazing. We had nearly 200 applications that first year. Don't you wish you had that now,
Well, we
Jan?
usually have about that.
Okay.
But that shows there was a real
There was
pent-up demand.
sure,
for it.
and an interesting story in connection with that was that I got a telephone call one day from my father's former law partner back in Wisconsin, Larry Chambers, who he said, I have a client whose son wants to go to law school, and I hear that you're involved in a law school there in Fresno. He's just graduated from the University of Wisconsin, has decent grades, but he says that getting into a law school is being just most difficult for him. And would you take him? And I said, well, if he'll apply and if he appears to be what you say he is, I think we would take him.
And
So-
who is that?
Andrew Sorensen.
Oh, gosh.
Andrew Sorensen came from Wisconsin out here and joined our first class.
Absolutely. Their family have cranberry bogs in
That
Wisconsin.
is right, and his daughter went to our law school.
Yes, she did. And they-
Our law school, you see.
The first class was 1970. We made the decision in the early 80s we built a library and funded it on Pacific College's campus, and then sold it back to Pacific College. When we left, we went out to Shields, just east of First Street, and it was a commercial building. We renovated a commercial building, and the law school, in effect, started. Dan Iman had a very untimely passing in the very late 70s, around 79 or 78. And so at that point, John Loomis became the dean. I was the assistant dean. And early on, our students had said, we have lots of great male role models, but where are the women on the faculty? And so we took some affirmative steps to include not only women faculty members, but we brought Mary Louise Frampton in as the secretary-treasurer to participate in the law school, and that led to hiring in around 1980 Carol Herbert as the first full-time dean of the law school. She stayed for 3 or 4 years, and then that was when Jan joined the law school as dean, and you know the history from there. It's been a wonderful progression.
So you've been on the board for 40 plus years now.
I've been on the board since 1969.
So that's 43 years at this
It's
point.
probably about right.
That's a long time, and there's been a whole lot of change in that period of time.
Yes.
What sticks in your mind?
What sticks in my mind is how marvelous the school has grown, expanded in its program, and grown from being just a bunch of us teaching classes into an institution with a lot more.
Where would you like to see the law school go from here?
I'm looking forward to seeing its becoming ABA accredited, hopefully within the next year or two, and continuing to then operate as a fully accredited ABA law school, where we get over the problem we've had of not being able to have our graduates qualify in all of the states.
Right. Our graduates deserve the same
They-
opportunities as everyone else because they're just as capable.
More so than many.
The ultimate objective through all these years has always been ABA accreditation. It's the holy grail. It requires bricks and mortar, and so that is something that I think is achievable. Nobody can say exactly when, but as the school continues to be a solid, well-run, responsible academic institution, performing increasingly, I think, community functions, that is really a matter of time.
And what do you think of the new clinics we have, the mediation clinic and the immigration?
I am absolutely amazed by particularly the immigration clinic. It has seemed to have filled a need both for the school and for the public.
It's true. It's true.
And I think it's becoming an example for other schools around the country.
It's certainly becoming well-known very quickly, very quickly. So
And congratulations on you guys for
it was
taking.
It's kind of an accident.
Was it sort of the idea of the present,
Community needs,
yeah?
and I knew we should be doing some kind of a clinic, so I surveyed the students as to what they would be most interested in, and overwhelmingly it was an immigration clinic.
Yeah.
So we ran with it, and it's just taken off.
And as a practicing lawyer, I had two instances where I ran into immigration problems. And both times I said, this system is not right. I had one where the older sister had gone to Mexico, the older sister being here legally. She went to Mexico to pick up her younger sisters because her parents had been murdered by banditos. And she brought them to Kerman. And it was several years later that a school teacher from Kerman came into my office and she said, we need help. I have two girls in high school here who have been picked up by the immigration people and are about to be sent to Mexico. Can you do anything as a lawyer about this? And she gave me the background that I've told you about. And I said, well, I don't practice immigration law, but I'll take a look to see. Give me a couple of hours. But she called me back and she said, they're on their way to Mexico. So I backed. There was nothing further I could do at the moment. And then a couple of days later, I got another call, and she said they're back in the country now. Sister and brother-in-law followed them the bus to Mexico, and once they got off the bus, they got back in the car with the sister, and they've come back to Kerman. But they're still illegal as far as I know, because I said, well, do they want to pursue the idea of trying to get legal status? And she said, well, I'll talk to them, and that's the last I heard of it.
Well, Justin actually, the professor in the immigration clinic, actually was able to stop a vehicle that was headed towards the border deporting somebody, and was able to keep, it's one of the first cases they had, was able to keep the father of a family in the country. So they're doing a lot of good work at this point. So that, and hopefully some other clinics, we also see as some of the future of the law school.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing Congress passing an immigration law that makes sense in this current session.
Well,
We hope
hopefully,
that will happen.
hopefully.
Do you remember anything particularly noteworthy or funny happening in the contracts class? Because I know you had some unique individuals in your contract.
I did. I do remember that his name escapes me at the moment, who always brought his dog with him.
It lay on the floor. It wasn't very obstructive. It barked once or twice during class, but beyond that, it was all okay.
I can't remember either. I know who you mean
Yeah,
though.
and he usually came barefooted too in the fall and he sat way in the back.
I remember Roger Veers coming to one of the very first classes with his dog. He was from Oregon. He was very much, it was the 60s, and it was, I had gone to Berkeley and had been there during the free speech movement at law school, and so it was quite an introduction. And so Roger was definitely, in sandals, the long hair, just, he represented the archetype. And he and Dan Iman almost came to blows over the presence of this dog in the classroom. Dan was a very authoritarian and a very strict kind of a taskmaster, and he saw everything perfectly ordered in a universe that moved like clockwork. And so he and Roger had what came close to a world war, and the aftermath of that is that Roger became a very successful and relatively conventional lawyer. He's got a family, he's got a house in Mexico as well as here, and kids. And so what you see is not what you get. The great thing was the Roger who was kind of wild and woolly, to what he's achieved, but also in that process, Dan Iman seeing that, dealing with it, getting so mad, going crazy, and yet in the final analysis, when the three of us talked, because Judge Iman wanted to boot him out of school. And so we had John Loomis and I and Judge Iman had the conversation, and we decided that we could accommodate academic freedom if that's the rubric that it falls under, and that the school wouldn't be any the worse for it, probably better.
So the dog stayed.
The dog stayed.
What kind of dog was it?
And it was a lab mix, a big dog though, who took up some not insignificant space.
Whenever we have legacy luncheons, and you've been at some of them, and you've gotten to see some of the people you taught contracts, but when we talk to the people from the early classes, and they will very proudly stand up and say, I was taught by the giants, and by them they basically mean you and Judge Wanger. So how does that make you feel? You obviously made an impression on a lot of young lawyers.
Well, I'm pleased to hear that. I'm glad to know they feel that they got a good education.
And they hold you in great esteem. So.
Well, there are many of them that I hold in great esteem myself.
They've gone on to do some pretty remarkable things.
They have.
So, thank you for spending some time talking with us this morning. We appreciate
Well,
it.
it has been my pleasure, Jan.
Good.
Thank you.
The San Joaquin Agricultural Law Review, founded in 1990, is the oldest agricultural law review in the country. It is published by the students of San Joaquin College of Law, which is located in California's Central Valley, one of the richest agricultural regions in the world. The Law Review presents student and scholar works on legal issues affecting agriculture, but the topics are also of special interest to those in government, business, and law. The San Joaquin Agricultural Law Review provides an objective national forum for analyzing issues affecting agriculture. It's received judicial and critical recognition, and its articles have been cited by the California Supreme Court, the California Appellate Court, the United States District Court, and others. Articles have also been cited in the annotations of several California statutes.
My name is Jesse Molina. I am currently the executive editor for the San Joaquin Agricultural Law Review. I wrote my article on the mandatory mediation conciliation process, which is a process that helps employers, farm owners particularly, and farm unions when they have gotten stuck in negotiations. The reason why I chose my article is because mediation and negotiation is an very interesting topic to me, and currently it's one of the most important skills and areas of all law right now, where courts are backed up and the ability for two parties to come to an agreement or mediate and have the self-determination of coming with their own resolution is more important than ever. So at the San Joaquin Agricultural Law Review, we look for issues that have to do with agriculture. So with my interest in mediation and wanting to connect it with agriculture, I looked for different areas and topics that I could talk about both. Being that my family history is rich in agriculture, particularly my grandfather and my father were farm workers, and my grandfather actually went on to be a labor contractor and ultimately owning his own farm and was a farm owner. The negotiations and the process and history of the relationship between the farm owner and farm workers was personal to me. And then also the history that California specifically faced with negotiations between unions and farm owners was actually fascinating. So my article looks at mediation, the mandatory mediation conciliation process, which is a statute that requires farm owners and farm unions to negotiate. And what I found was that the process didn't have all the benefits that traditional mediation had. So my law review article focused on what mediation is supposed to be, what the California State Supreme Court has said mediation is supposed to be, and how important mediation is, especially when it comes to being voluntary, self-determination, and people creating their own destiny, but also keeping in mind some of the issues that farm workers had with regard to not having a voice or some poor working conditions. There's many farm workers and many farm owners have made tremendous efforts over the years to provide great working conditions and reasonable salaries. However, there have been a few that have not. And in the history of this relationship, the rights and the process has grown and developed. However, when I looked at this mandatory mediation conciliation process, it was really outdated. It was a format that was adopted in the 60s, but it was currently being used today. And the basics of the format was after the parties, a farm owner and farm union, have had 180 days of stalled negotiations. They have a process that they have to do. They don't have a choice. They're required by law to mediate. So it takes already out some of the voluntariness of mediation. Also, after 180 days of conflict, when they have been even more entrenched in their views, coming to an agreement, it was even more difficult. So that's one of the issues that I looked at. Another issue is that the mediator, when he meets with the parties, or she meets with the parties, if there is not an agreement within a specified time, usually about 30 days, that same person, that same mediator turns into the arbitrator and makes a binding decision on both parties. So mediation is supposed to be, according to the California State Supreme Court, a voluntary process where people can feel comfortable to share, and nothing that they use in the mediation can be used against them in arbitration or subsequent proceedings. So it allows them to be more honest, more forthcoming, and help the dynamics of the conflict, help the dynamics of the conversation to ultimately reach a resolution. However, the current model makes it to where the mediator becomes the arbitrator, and that confidentiality, that ability to be honest and open is gone, because that mediator, the arbitrator, makes the decision. So parties are very careful what they say, and there's, the bottom line is arbitrators, no matter how skilled they are still human beings, and they hear certain things. So I looked at all the benefits of mediation, what it's supposed to be, and proposed a solution to separate the two processes so you can have mediation and all the benefits of mediation and arbitration separate. So the bottom line for my article was I proposed some solutions specifically to shorten the 180-day wait period and to separate the arbitration and mediation into two separate processes with two separate people so they can have the benefits of both. And already the California legislature, beginning of 2012, has implemented one of those solutions, not based on my article, but based on the issue, and they have already shortened up that 180-day timeline. My name is Jesse Molina. I'm the executive editor with the San Joaquin Agricultural Law Review. Thank you for watching.
The success of San Joaquin College of Law is both measured and reflected by the success of its alumni. Among the more than 1,300 graduates are 24 judges and court commissioners, the Fresno, Tulare, and Madera County District Attorneys, the California Health and Human Services Secretary, and practitioners in every area of public and private service. We're pleased to offer this portion of San Joaquin College of Law today to a member of that alumni rank.
Hello, I'm William Brewer, a 1976 graduate of San Joaquin College of Law, and I'm here today with fellow alumnus David Weiland, and we're going to talk briefly about high-speed rail. If I may just give an overview of what property owners that are being impacted by the project might expect. First of all, you will receive a package from the High-Speed Rail Authority that contains a number of documents, one of which will be a proposed right of entry authorization. And property owners out there just need to know that it's not necessary that you sign that particular form of right of entry, which often is drafted by public agencies to the prejudice of the property owner. The eminent domain process begins with the presentation by the public agency of a pre-condemnation offer based upon an independent appraisal. Once that appraisal and offer is made, the landowner has the option of getting his own appraisal, which must be funded up to $5,000 by the public agency. And the owner has a reasonable period of time to consider the offer and make a decision as to whether he wants to accept it or not. If he accepts this, at the end of the matter. If not, the next step is for the public agency to hold a public hearing, adopt the resolution of necessity, and take evidence, make findings based on the evidence. Once that is done, the agency is freed up to file a formal eminent domain action by complaint in the Superior Court. And the process then proceeds, if necessary, to trial and so forth. If I may just give a very brief background on this project. The High-Speed Rail Authority project was authorized by the adoption by the voters of Proposition 1A, and that proposition imposed a lot of limitations and restrictions on the use of the bond funds authorized by the voters. Moving to the impact on agriculture, the high-speed rail project was to be planned and constructed within existing transportation corridors, and there are many other restrictions and limitations. But the impact on the prime agricultural land running through the valley, which contains the most productive agricultural counties in the nation, is devastating. Many vineyards and orchards and row crops and pasture land is being literally sliced in half, cutting off such things as the source of irrigation, the pumps and wells and so forth that generates through the irrigation system, literally the lifeblood. It's like severing an important artery, bringing life to the orchards. And the impacts on the farmers in that regard is just huge. In the before condition, they could maybe go 100 yards or 1/8 of a mile from point A to point B on their own property. In the after condition, they're going to have to drive on public roads, pulling tractors and tractor implements and so forth, maybe for a number of miles to get to the same spot on their property. It should be pointed out that there's a significant lawsuit that's been filed by farmers in Kings County challenging the project on the basis of the multitude of violations that the voters imposed on the High-Speed Rail Authority and the use of those bond funds for failure to comply with many conditions and limitations on the use of those funds. Among them, and there are many, are the fact that it's not being constructed in existing transportation corridors. Another is that they're violating the funding requirements imposed by the voters. For example, the Prop 1A and Rail Authority's own conditions to the project identified Merced to the San Fernando Valley as the initial segment that had to be fully funded before they could proceed with the project. In fact, they cut it down lower than that identified segment and initially are only going to construct from south of Madera into Fresno. And they have funding for that, allegedly, $6.1 million, but they are required under the conditions that exist now to have funding for over $30 billion to build the whole project. Another violation in the lawsuit raised is that the Rail Authority is not building a usable and ready project. This initial construction segment or subsegment is just going to be a traditional rail system. And sometime later, they're going to add electrification and trains. So they have to add those things, they have to purchase trains, all that, before it even begins to meet the criteria of Prop 1A. There are a number of other conditions and exactions which the lawsuit raises based on actual evidence that the Rail Authority is violating. Now, the impact of that is that there is at least a possibility, if the lawsuit is successful, that the high-speed rail project could be put on hold or set back a number of years and maybe canceled altogether. So that's just a pending thing that's happening that's relatively big news. Now I'll turn it over to my fellow alumnus, David Weiland. David?
Thank you, Bill. Unlike the rail routes that have been planned through the rural areas, which essentially cut right through the middle of very valuable agricultural property, the route through Fresno generally follows existing transportation corridors. Starting at the San Joaquin River, the route pretty much follows along Golden State Boulevard and the Union Pacific route until it gets into the main part of town, continues along the Union Pacific route, and then between Jensen Avenue and North Avenue on the south side of Fresno begins a very slow and gradual turn to where it then starts following the Santa Fe route on the west side of, or the southwest side of Freeway 99. The effect of that is that all of the businesses generally speaking, along the west side of the Union Pacific train tracks are going to be severely impacted. There are anywhere between 75 and 150 parcels of property that will have to be acquired. And for the most part, those properties are already developed. There are a few undeveloped properties, but again, for the most part, they have apartment buildings, mobile home parks, warehouses, mini storage facilities, parkland, office buildings, any number of different commercial and industrial types of uses. And so when you think in terms of acquiring property and building a rail line, all of those buildings and improvements and structures are going to have to be removed. And those property owners are going to have to relocate. More than likely, there probably aren't between 75 and 150 vacant properties in Fresno where those property owners could relocate their businesses. And I'm not sure that our city council has considered the effect of that, but I think the effect is going to be profound because many of those business owners are suddenly going to find that there's no place for them to go. What we have been attempting to do when we meet with property owners is to explain to them their rights. And when you're a business owner, which is a little bit different than a residential owner, the impacts can be quite a bit different. Just like with a dairy that may have to be reorganized, if you will, in terms of where certain facilities are on a dairy farm, the same thing holds true for a business. Depending on the amount of property being taken from that business owner, they could be looking at having to change the point of entry into their business. They could be looking at having to reorient completely the way the buildings are located on the property. They could be looking at having to move completely. So the effect is going to be significant. I'd like to analogize it to the effect that Highway 41 had on Fresno when it was first built back in the I think it was in the 70s. If you will remember, that highway cut right through the heart of Fresno, and many homes, many businesses were impacted, relocated. There was a period of time when it was very difficult to drive from the west side of Fresno to the east side of Fresno because many of the major streets were cut by construction. That same process is going to be experienced again, only it's going to be happening right through the heart of some of the busiest transportation corridors in Fresno, primarily Highway 99, all of the businesses along Golden State Boulevard, the businesses in downtown Fresno where much of our legal commerce takes place and so forth. So much of what I have been dealing with is talking to business owners and property owners in the Fresno Central area who are going to be profoundly affected by the taking and the construction of the project itself. I'm David Weiland, class of 1992. I'm here with Bill Brewer, class of 1976. We encourage all of the listeners to this program to consider the effects that the high-speed rail project is going to have on their properties. Please feel free to contact us. If you have your own legal counsel, contact them because your rights will be significantly affected. I want to thank you and good day.
San Joaquin College of Law has 2 free legal clinics operated by students and overseen by faculty members. SJCL students are doing groundbreaking work in non-adversarial property division agreements and divorces in the mediation clinic. Clients meet with a student to work out a marital settlement agreement, which can then be filed with the court. The New American Legal Clinic assists legal immigrants in obtaining citizenship, working through the processes of naturalization. The Now Clinic also assists those seeking family-based immigrant visas or U visas, depending upon eligibility.
Hello, my name is Joshua Longoria. I'm a student advocate at San Joaquin College of Law in the New American Legal Clinic. I am a 3L, which means it's my 3rd out of 4 years at San Joaquin College of Law. This is my 2nd year working for the New American Legal Clinic. I was part of the founding year, and I've volunteered every single semester since. I love working in the clinic. It's a great experience. One of the things I really want to talk about is the naturalization workshops that we do. As part of the requirement for our grants, we have clinics that we run with different organizations in the community. We will work with certain organizations. One of the big ones that we work with is the adult school here in Fresno. We will work with them, help students out, and as soon as students are ready to naturalize, we will help them to be able to fill out all the paperwork, get everything ready to go, make sure they do not have any legal issues, and give them the representation that they otherwise wouldn't be able to afford. One of the things that the New American Legal Clinic focuses on is helping the community, specifically the low-income community. There are several people that aren't aware of certain types of fee waivers, any types of underlying legal issues, and we make sure that all individuals have the ability to speak to an attorney, make sure their whole file is reviewed before anything goes out. Another thing that the New American Legal Clinic does is work with the Mexican consulate to be able to establish ties to the community. That's a place where lots of immigrants in the area feel comfortable with, specifically when they are Mexican. So that's one of the relationships that we have built to be able to build trust in the community and have a place where individuals would feel safe coming forward and revealing their personal details about their specific cases. For individuals that aren't Mexican and aren't able to enter into the Mexican consulate for security reasons, they have their own protocol. Our office is always open so that individuals can come, sit down with a student advocate, and under the review of an attorney, we'll be able to address their legal issues and give them some type of relief so that they could understand what their legal issues are, if there are any, and what procedures they need to do to be able to, have the outcome that they desire. Another thing that we do is, because of the big need in the community after what's called DACA, it's Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. Since that has come out just recently over the past few months, there has been a huge demand in our community about deferred action as to workshops, workshops in an instructional sort of point of view where people just want general information. And there are also workshops that we work with different organizations in our community to be able to provide legal assistance to students or youth who have the possibility of using deferred action to be able to better their situation. It's very much a hot topic. It's something that has been in the media a lot, and it's something that even though we want to help out the community with this, it's not one of our focus points, but we do help people with deferred action and explain things to them so that they're able to decide for themselves whether it's right for them. And if the situation requires it, I think we have taken on a few deferred action cases, but again, our main focus in the community helping out everybody is for naturalizations, but we do take several different cases. One of the other different types of cases that we take are, they're called VAWA cases, which is Violence Against Battered Women's Act, and U visa cases, which is crime victims. Both of those are forms of relief for individuals who have either been victims of domestic violence or victims of crimes in general. That's something that several individuals who are domestic violence victims or crime victims are very hesitant to come forward because they feel that if they come forward, then they are basically putting themselves in a compromising situation where they may or may not be referred to immigration authorities by coming forward with the information that they're presenting themselves with to be able to become eligible for their visa. In those type of situations, it's always important for an individual to speak to an attorney and decide for themselves whether it's the right course of action and whether there are any immigration risks and weigh the possible benefits to those risks. Another issue that's very important, I think, to bring up is that our clinic works in a lot of ways to help families that are separated or very easily could be separated. There are several individuals that are worried about trying to do an immigration process, being separated, having to leave the country for sometimes 3 to 10 years. A lot of times people come to the clinic because they're worried about their family structure, about the future of their families, and it's a great experience educationally and just gaining experience to be a future lawyer, to be able to help people work with clients hands-on, see their specific set of facts, and see how the law applies to be able to give them, if possible, the relief that they're looking for. It also is important to be able to help these individuals because if things aren't done correctly, it could very easily lead to family separations, and it could lead to very compromising situations for the long-term outlook of the family structure. For me personally, this is a great experience. Ever since I've been working for the immigration clinic, it's been a great experience personally because I've always wanted to work in immigration. It's one of the reasons I went into law. When I first entered San Joaquin College of Law, there was no immigration classes. There was no immigration clinic. It was one of the things that I wasn't. It was one of the things that I was looking towards other universities to be able to get. However, I knew that I wanted to come here, so I came here nonetheless. Regardless of that, once the immigration clinic opened up, I knew that it was instantly what I wanted to do. Ever since I've been doing it, I've just loved it. It can be very rewarding to be able to see somebody who's very much in need, who doesn't always have the ability to represent themselves, and be able to help them to be able to put themselves in a better situation than when they first entered our office. Another thing that we do is with the deferred action that just came out, it's also very rewarding because it's more of an instant benefit. It's not a big, huge, long process. Some of them can go for months, whereas some immigration issues typically go for years. This is something that students can jump in. They could help an individual out specifically. Once you help somebody get something like a work permit, it's not a huge form of relief, but being able to provide somebody so that they could be able to work here legally and have some sort of indirect status, it's very rewarding to be able to help somebody understand that it's going to affect their life and that you've done something to be able to benefit them. Again, my name is Joshua Longoria. I'm a student advocate for New American Legal Clinic, and thank you very much for watching.
And that brings us to the end of this edition of San Joaquin College of Law Today, presented by San Joaquin College of Law, a nonprofit law school committed to educational excellence and community service. The views expressed do not necessarily reflect the position or views of San Joaquin College of Law. This program has been produced in conjunction with the Community Media Access Collaborative. We invite you to join us in the future as we explore issues and events within the law school which are of general interest as well. For more information about San Joaquin College of Law, please visit our website at www.sjcl.edu or call 559-323-2100.